So as I said, one of the things that we've done this year is really to group the broadband leadership by state of economic development, and we have used the state of economic development as defined by the World Economic Forum. And you would normally, you could expect that the line goes from South Korea all the way down to Angola, but in fact that's not the case. What we see is that in some of the efficiency economies, we do have countries like Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Hungary that are actually doing much better than some of the innovation economies. So this is again, and the same goes for Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Egypt. And so this is again a reflection that some of these countries are actually leapfrogging and are really making broadband as part of their growth strategy and spending a lot of focus to deploy high-quality broadband. Cities, we have 41 cities that will be ready for tomorrow, or are already ready for tomorrow. I think, as Chris said earlier on, we can be very proud in Europe. I think we're doing really very well. Europe is leading, in fact, if you look at the cities, with 21 cities, and Budapest is also there, 12 in the Eastern Europe area. Asia is following with 7 cities, and the US with just 1. Seoul is the capital of the world that has the highest quality, according to this research, and Japan would be the country with most cities with the highest quality in the world on average. And I just find interesting that, you know, regardless of the GDP per capita, for example, as I said, Budapest seems to have exactly the same quality in terms of readiness of tomorrow than for example, Stockholm. So I said that for the first time we're looking, and this is a very high-level snapshot. I think we're going to refine our research, but we have looked a little bit on a global basis at the quality of mobile broadband. And this is a distribution of all the tests around the world, so not per country. And on average, I think the conclusion is that it's not yet ready to meet today's application on average. So the average download speed, for example, is 900 kilobits per second. But what we see today is that already 10% of mobile broadband users enjoy download speeds of 3.75 and upload of 1 megabit per second, which is what we said that it was sufficient to meet today's application. So that's encouraging. We also see that you have 4% that have an average download throughput of 7 megabit per second and latency of 100 milliseconds. So, you know, that's clearly enough for, you know, quite good for some of the tablets and iPads and, you know, netbooks that we are seeing today. And clearly, as countries develop LTE and as more spectrum will become available, mobile is going to become a very, very important complement to fixed networks in order to bring the quality that we need. This is just a rating in terms of the countries. I think it's also interesting to see that some of the countries that are doing less well, maybe in fixed, are actually leaders in mobile broadband quality. For example, in the case of Europe, Spain and Estonia and Hungary are rating pretty well, obviously with Sweden and Denmark, and the US is also doing very well. Now, let me shift a little bit and talk a little bit about also the broadband consumption patterns. I find this is, for me, one of the most interesting areas for the study. And clearly, you know, I mean, we always get the question, and we always hear the question, why do we need all this broadband? Is that just to do gaming, entertainment? Do we really need to put all this effort? And what we see as well is that the very divergent patterns depending on the household. So if you look at a basic household, I mean, what do you do in a basic household? I mean, this is a little bit of blogging, perhaps 3 hours of email, 3 hours of file sharing, 2 hours of file, half an hour of gaming, a little bit of instant messaging, some web video calls, a la Skype, some video streaming. So, and again, this is an interactive tool, so you can play around with it. But if we do that, which could be like what a basic digital household does on a daily basis, what you need would be 20 gigabits per month. and a minimum download throughput of 2.7 megabit per second. Now, if we look at maybe what a smart and connected household would do, where you may have one of the spouses that is working from home, you have 2 or 3 children, so you do a little bit more twittering, you do e-banking, you do more email, but you also do connected education, perhaps, which is one of the applications I think that in the future will definitely help in many cases, in many regions. E-security, 8 hours, you do home management control, you do a little bit of consumer telepresence, which requires more symmetric bandwidth, a little bit of video streaming. So we move very, very quickly from what I said before, so from 20 gigabit per month to 500 gigabit per month, and a minimal download of 18 megabit per second. So these two households can be next to each other, and the consumers are going to have very different patterns. And this is why also we are seeing more and more the service providers offering different targeting, different propositions in terms of the broadband propositions, and addressing different consumers' needs. So it's important that there is obviously choice, and there is obviously the possibility of differentiation. And then finally, there are many studies, and we heard some of the studies were quoted earlier this morning about the impact of broadband in GDP growth, in the competitiveness and the innovation of the economies. We have run more than 40 regressions to check if there was any connection. I think the result is obviously yes. You see some of the connections there in terms of broadband penetration, impacting GDP per capita, labor productivity. If we talk about broadband quality and the correlations between broadband quality, as I said earlier on, and fiber and upgraded cable. And also, some of the correlations are particularly interesting, and I unfortunately don't have time to go through it, but there is also a correlation between broadband quality and female participation in workforce, which is actually I can personally speak for, because, the fact that I have high-quality broadband allows me to work from home and have a flexible way of working. So that's obviously important. And finally, on broadband leadership and the link with the knowledge economy. So just to sort of wrap up, as I only have 2 more minutes. So in conclusion, clearly, I think we are on the right path. It's very encouraging to have the digital agenda, and many, many countries that are already going beyond the digital agenda in terms of setting their broadband goals. I think it's also clearly very important to have a positive environment to encourage private investment, and we've heard that also, but clearly this is not going to happen without private investment. And most of the broadband leaders actually is not public sector, it's really led by a competitive environment where private investment is rolling out these networks. So the regulatory environment and getting it right, it's important. And finally, important to encourage innovation both at the edge and within the networks, and to be able to offer differentiated services, premium services, which at the end allows the operators also to monetize their investment. So with that, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, happy to.
Just to reinforce the comment Pastora made about the smart household, a Japanese ISP has just for the first time introduced a maximum download capability per day on their network. The Japanese ISP has set its maximum download per day at 30 gigabytes. Yeah, that's tomorrow's network.